So we have some news about a former champion returning to Impact Wrestling very, very soon. Now, I won't go into the details of who that is just yet, so if you don't want to be spoiled, please leave the video right now. We'll give you about 4 or 5 seconds. Right, so let's get into it. Who is this former champion returning to Impact Wrestling very soon? Well, it's none other than former Knockouts champion Taylor Wilde. Yes, you can see her there. Taylor Wilde is returning to Impact Wrestling very soon. Now, according to a report from PW Insider, former TNA Knockouts champion and Knockouts Tag Team champion, that's very crucial to remember here, Taylor Wilde is scheduled to return to Impact Wrestling. Now, of course, Taylor Wilde was part of TNA Wrestling beginning in 2008, and she was with the company for several years and was incredibly successful during this period with Impact Wrestling, or previously TNA Wrestling. But she announced her retirement from pro wrestling in 2011. This was to pursue a degree in psychology and also become a firefighter during that period. Since the summer, though, she's been working on hosting her Wilde On podcast, which has featured the likes of former TNA World Heavyweight Champion Samoa Joe and also Killer Kelly. But back in June, Taylor Wilde did do an interview with WrestleZone and told the website that prior to the COVID pandemic ongoing right now, she was supposed to appear at Impact Wrestling's lockdown event in Canada. She said, quote, "Truth be told, because I have quite a history with the people who work at Impact, formerly TNA, it was like a tryout situation for the both of us. I know I love wrestling and I'm excited to get back in the ring, but it's been a long time. So, to make sure it's something I really wanted, and if I'm really into it, it would have gone from there. Then there's the simple fact that I'm Canadian, and these are American dates, so a lot of paperwork goes into that, so Windsor, it all seemed like a good fit." However, within this same report, PW Insider also noted that Impact Wrestling has taped television through the end of 2020. Of course, their show airs Tuesday nights on AXS TV, which includes tonight, so if Taylor Wilde is returning to Impact Wrestling very soon, it could actually be the case that Taylor Wilde has already returned and filmed her matches, promos, vignettes, etc., and could be appearing for Impact Wrestling as soon as tonight. Now, I think myself, I did a video on this last week and I spoke about who potentially Jordynne Grace's tag team partner could be in the upcoming Knockouts Tag Team Championship tournament. I think now it looks pretty likely that Taylor Wilde is going to be revealed as Jordynne Grace's tag team partner. Now, I don't have that confirmed. That's me just trying to sort of read the lay of the land, try and read the tea leaves, as it were, when it comes to Jordynne Grace's tag team partner. But last week, Taylor Wilde was one of the names that I speculated on could be Jordynne Grace's tag team partner in this Knockouts Tag Team Championship tournament. Now, as far as I'm aware, is it tonight, or it's definitely tonight, or next week, Jordynne Grace will have her first match in the Knockouts Tag Team Championship tournament. So we could see Taylor Wilde return to Impact Wrestling as soon as tonight on AXS TV. So there's certainly no doubt that you won't want to miss Impact Wrestling on AXS tonight. But last week, of course, I mentioned about Jordynne Grace's tag team partner. Last week we saw a backstage vignette with Jordynne Grace. She's on the phone with a mystery person. She's on the phone to someone. She's looking for a tag team partner. She didn't have one, but she's in this Knockouts Tag Team Championship tournament to crown the inaugural Knockouts Tag Team Champions after the championships have returned to the company. So last week, Jordynne Grace is on the phone to someone backstage, and she's talking to him, and she says, "When I heard that you're retiring, I knew that I had to call you. I'm glad you've accepted to do this with me." Now, Taylor Wilde isn't exactly retiring. She's been retired for 9 years, which kind of, I think, threw people off the scent a little bit when it came to, is Taylor Wilde going to be revealed as Jordynne Grace's tag team partner? Again, it's still the case she might not be. Just because she's returning doesn't mean that she's necessarily going to be Jordynne Grace's tag team partner. That hasn't been confirmed as of yet, but what I think that Taylor Wilde will be revealed as Jordynne Grace's mystery tag team partner. Even Jordynne Grace had a bit of fun with this on Twitter last week after this vignette aired, and people were rightfully so guessing who this tag team partner could be. Some people said Tara, some people said ODB. We went through all of those names last week in the video that we did on it, so be sure to check that out. Not many people said Taylor Wilde. It actually was one of the names that I predicted in the video, but Jordynne Grace said at the time, none of you have guessed who this is yet, so maybe it will be Taylor Wilde, maybe it won't be. What we do know is that she is returning to Impact Wrestling very soon. Now, of course, last week we saw the first round of the Knockouts Tag Team Championships tournament where Havoc and Nevaeh defeated Tenille Dashwood and Alicia Edwards. Both females, Tenille Dashwood and Alicia Edwards, of course, had teamed with Jordynne Grace previously, but to not great success, where Jordynne Grace had actually lost the matches where she teamed with Tenille Dashwood and Alicia Edwards. So they decided to team up together, but that didn't work out for them. So maybe we'll have a story where Jordynne Grace was just trying to find the right tag team partner to go to success and become the Knockouts Tag Team Champions. Now, as I mentioned, in the first round of the tournament, Jordynne Grace and her mystery tag team partner will face Impact Wrestling's one of Impact Wrestling's outside tag teams of Killer Kelly and Renee Michelle. I mentioned that Killer Kelly was actually on Taylor Wilde's podcast earlier this year, so that's a nice piece of information there. Maybe a bit of a coincidence, maybe not, who knows. But let's go into a bit of background when it comes to Taylor Wilde, her achievements with Impact Wrestling, why it's such a big deal that she is returning to the company here in 2020. So her run with Impact Wrestling was very short actually, but she achieved so much during this short period of time. Now, prior to coming to TNA Wrestling in 2008, she had previously been under a developmental contract with WWE. Of course, that didn't go anywhere. Taylor Wilde never made a debut on Raw or SmackDown or anything like that, but she was with Impact from 2008 to 2010 and achieved a lot during that period of time. But on January 10, 2011, Taylor Wilde announced that she was retiring from professional wrestling in order to concentrate on her psychology studies, which we previously mentioned. She actually wrestled her retirement match on February 5th, 2011 at a Chick Fight and Pro Wrestling Revolution co-promoted event where she was defeated by Alyssa Flash. I mentioned that Taylor Wilde achieved quite a lot during her period of time, as I mentioned, only with the company for 2 years, but it's certainly the place that she is best known for. It's certainly the promotion that she became famous in, and it's certainly she's the promotion and this run that elevated her to a national level when it comes to pro wrestling and national recognition of a knockout, a female wrestler that everyone knew and was quite excited about. During her time with Impact Wrestling, Taylor Wilde was a one-time Knockouts champion. She defeated Awesome Kong to become the Knockouts champion, was actually the third ever Knockouts champion after Gail King and Awesome Kong. She also, and this is why I think it's so vital that she's coming back to be the tag team partner with Jordynne Grace, she's a two-time TNA Knockouts Tag Team Champion, but most importantly was one half of the inaugural Knockout Tag Team Champions with Sarita. Now, she also had a further championship reign, Knockouts Tag Team Championship reign with Hamada in Impact Wrestling, but it's that inaugural Knockouts Tag Team Championship run with Sarita that a lot of people do remember as well. So it makes a ton of sense to have the inaugural Knockouts Tag Team Champion come back and wrestle for Impact Wrestling when they're bringing back those same Knockouts Tag Team Championships. What a story it would be if one half of the inaugural Tag Team Champions could return and become one half of the inaugural Tag Team Champions again once the championships return. It'd be incredible, really. It'd be a fantastic story, and it'd be a great way for Impact to delve into their history, show a lot of old footage of Taylor Wilde and the Knockouts Tag Team Championships, really showcase what the championships were and what they're going to be now. They're going to be even better. I think that's going to be a really fun story to tell there. Now, as I mentioned, she did admit that she was booked for the Impact Wrestling lockdown event earlier this year, but of course that never happened due to the pandemic. But there had been rumours about Taylor Wilde possibly appearing earlier on in the year as well at the TNA There's No Place Like Home event, which of course was originally scheduled for Tampa Bay during WrestleMania weekend, but of course that event was cancelled due to the ongoing pandemic, as was her appearance at the lockdown event in Windsor, Ontario, Canada on March 28th. So it's exciting because this is one of those returns or matches with the company, or old TNA originals or former TNA wrestlers returning to the company that got cancelled or scrapped from earlier this year, but they're still revisiting it and it's still going to happen. Now, I mentioned since she retired from pro wrestling, Taylor Wilde has become a full-time firefighter, and she said that she could have travelled to these events, and earlier in the year she could have travelled to work for Impact Wrestling as an essential worker, but she didn't want to be away from her family and community because of quarantine measures, of course, coming in from Canada. So I'm so excited for this. I'm really excited for this. Taylor Wilde, actually, if you do follow her on social media, I believe also, she, like I said, she has a podcast as well, and if you follow her on social media, she's been teasing a return to pro wrestling, specifically Impact Wrestling, for a long time. If you look at her on social media, actually, she posted a picture of her wearing the old TNA Knockouts Championship. It was a cartoon picture, again, teasing that this return is soon, and it looks like it could happen as soon as tonight, or like I said, quite frankly, it's already happened because Impact tapes their show, so it would have already happened. She's been retired for almost 10 years at this point. They've been retired for 10 years at this point, and I can't think of a better place for her to return than Impact Wrestling. As I mentioned, that's the place where she's most well known. That's the company that most people associate with Taylor Wilde. And as I mentioned, there were plans for her to return at the start of the year. And this is just another example of returns planned for earlier this year that Impact Wrestling finally are able to get to now that we know a little bit more about the pandemic. Travel restrictions or rules restrictions have been lifted slightly, or at least Impact have a better idea of how to do things safely. And it's just another example of that. The Motor City Machine Guns, of course, we know the story with them with Impact right now. But earlier this year at that TNA There's No Place Like Home event that I mentioned, plans were for Alex Shelley and Chris Sabin to reunite at that event, and that would kickstart a run for them with Impact Wrestling once again. Of course, the event was cancelled back in April, but the Motor City Machine Guns returned nevertheless at Slammiversary, and then they had an Impact World Tag Team Championship run over the summer and the spring. So this return happened anyway. They're still with the company. Alex Shelley is currently on the shelf with a neck injury, but he's going to be returning in 2021, and Chris Sabin's still doing great things with the company too. The TNA World Heavyweight Championship, this is another example of that. The TNA World Heavyweight Championship was to return to the company at TNA There's No Place Like Home back in April. It was going to be a King of the Mountain ladder match with Moose winning, and then we were going to have this TNA World Heavyweight Championship storyline with Moose getting elevated because of being the TNA World Heavyweight Champion. Of course, the event got cancelled, but they persisted with the storyline anyway. Instead of having the King of the Mountain match, Moose just showed up with the TNA World Heavyweight Championship that he still carries around to this day. So once again, Taylor Wilde falls into this category with the Motor City Machine Guns, with the TNA World Heavyweight Championship. Of plans that Impact had, they were postponed, not cancelled, postponed, because of the ongoing pandemic, but we've managed to get to them eventually, which I'm really excited to see. And of course, it makes total sense for her to return, as I mentioned previously, with the Knockouts Tag Team Championships. Of course, she was associated with being a former Knockouts champion, but I think maybe arguably her greatest success is that Knockouts Tag Team Championship run, the first one. There's only one first. And that's what Taylor Wilde was, along with Sarita, as the first Knockouts Tag Team Champions in Impact history. So it makes total sense for her to return for the Knockouts Tag Team Championship tournament. And I really, you look at knockouts that are possibly departing, or have departed the company, then Impact needs to bring in names. I've been saying this across multiple divisions, but especially in the Knockouts division as well. We know that Kylie Ray has recently departed Impact Wrestling, and she's retired and she's not coming back. Ty Valkyrie, there's question marks about her future currently in Impact Wrestling. Her contract expires at the end of the year. What her future is at the moment, we just don't know her future when it comes to Impact Wrestling. She could re-sign. I think there are options for her out there, totally. Obviously, her husband, John Morrison, currently works for WWE. I'm sure WWE would be interested, and I'm sure AEW would be interested in Ty Valkyrie too. So that's two big names possibly leaving the company when it comes to the Knockouts division. So Impact needs to bring in names. And I think there is unfinished business, quite frankly, when it comes to Taylor Wilde. Taylor Wilde had a super short career. Obviously, like I said, she had worked on the indies and she did have a WWE developmental deal before she came to Impact Wrestling. But her run in Impact was from 2008 to 2010. And she retired in 2011. And she, despite having a very short career, she had a very, very impactful, pun intended, career. And she will always be associated with Impact Wrestling for the achievements that she did during her time there. It's the place she's most known for competing in. It's the place where she had the most success. And I, for one, am very, very excited to see her return. And what I really like about the return of Taylor Wilde to Impact Wrestling is she's the previous generation of the Knockouts division. Yes, she was super young then, but now coming back, this is a new generation of Knockouts. She's part of that previous generation, even though she's probably the same age as most of these people in this current generation of Knockouts. It's a bit crazy, but she is associated with that previous generation of Knockouts, of the Gail Kins, of the Awesome Kongs, etc. And she is part of that generation, so to have matches against the current Knockouts, I think is really exciting. I'm really excited to see her face off against current members of the Impact Knockouts division, the likes of Impact Knockouts champion currently, Deonna Purrazzo. Deonna Purrazzo versus Taylor Wilde, that to me is really interesting. Su Yung, seeing Su Yung face off against Taylor Wilde, I want to see that. Rosemary. Ironically, Rosemary is actually older than Taylor Wilde, but she's part of this newer generation. Taylor Wilde's part of the old generation. I mentioned Taya Valkyrie. Obviously, we don't know the situation with her contract. She might be leaving. She might have, at this point, taped all of her final Impact Wrestling appearances if Impact have finished all of their TV tapings for the rest of this year. But if that is the case, I want to see a Taylor Wilde versus Taya Valkyrie match before Taya Valkyrie departs Impact, if indeed she is departing. So I think there is a ton of potential matches for Taylor Wilde to compete in with this return to Impact Wrestling. Of course, as I mentioned, if she is revealed as the mystery tag team partner for Jordynne Grace, obviously that tag team is going to be a lot of fun. You've got the power of Jordynne Grace, but you've also got the speed of Taylor Wilde. I think that that style complements each other's very, very well. But also, as most tag teams, once you start tagging together, once your two singles superstars move together, or two single wrestlers, not superstars, put together, the split of the tag team is almost inevitable at certain points, isn't it? So I think a Jordynne Grace versus Taylor Wilde match could be a lot of fun. Jordynne Grace versus Taylor Wilde feud, that can be a lot of fun too. You've got Tenille Dashwood, Alicia Edwards, that can have great matches against Taylor Wilde. There is so many of these potential matchups and such a variety of these potential matchups that could be so interesting and they're not going to be dream matches, but it's going to be a clash of generations. As I mentioned, Taylor Wilde is associated with one generation. Now we're in the modern generation, and Taylor Wilde versus these current knockouts is going to be really interesting. And obviously, Taylor Wilde, she teamed with and had matches against Gail Kim previously in her time with Impact Wrestling. I doubt Gail Kim's going to come back and do another match. But I think we'll probably at some point we'll get an on-camera appearance from both of them, reminiscing, facing off, or just talking, having a promo, and that'll be a nice throwback to the old TNA Impact days on Spike TV. You have to remember, when it comes to Taylor Wilde, this is why it's so fascinating to me, is that she's only 34. In the age of a pro wrestler, 34, she's in her prime. People forget, when Taylor Wilde retired back in 2010, 2011, she was only 25. So the amount that she achieved during her time with Impact Wrestling, Knockouts champion, 2-time Knockouts tag team champion, she did all of that by the time she was 25. She hadn't even reached her peak yet. She was the 3rd ever Knockouts champion. She defeated Awesome Kong to win that title. So she has a ton of history of Impact Wrestling. And even at the age of 25, she achieved everything there was to achieve in Impact Wrestling for a female at that period of time. And that is incredibly impressive and kind of mind-boggling that she decided to retire when she did. And now, in 2020, given how vital and fundamental the Knockouts division to the show is right now and to the promotion, there are multiple Knockouts matches on the show, there are multiple Knockouts storylines, now we're going to have multiple titles on the show. To see her coming back, mixing it up with the current generation of Knockouts and female wrestlers in the company is so exciting. As I've mentioned, Impact Wrestling have already taped these shows. They've taped all of their episodes of Impact on AXS TV for the remainder of 2020 now. So I would have thought she's probably already returned. Her matches have already been taped and her promos have already been taped. Unless the only thing I can think of that would be why she hasn't wrestled is that she was just appearing in the ring for promos, I guess, or they just started airing vignettes. But I think most likely Taylor Wilde will be revealed to be Jordynne Grace's partner. So possibly, as I've mentioned before at the start of this video, we could see Taylor Wilde return as soon as tonight's episode of Impact on AXS TV. So that's incredibly exciting too. More of a reason to tune in tonight to watch Impact on AXS TV. So the question then will be, if she is revealed as Jordynne Grace's tag team partner, will Jordynne Grace and Taylor Wilde go all the way and win the Knockouts Tag Team Championship tournament? It's a tough one. It is a tough one. Personally, I would love for actual tag teams to win it. But a lot of the teams in this tournament are kind of, single stars put together. Why not? Why not? It would certainly give Jordynne Grace something to do. And obviously the Impact officials are very high on her. And I like the story of being the inaugural tag team champion twice, returning to the company after a 9-year absence, returning out of retirement after a 9-year retirement and going straight back in and becoming the Knockouts Tag Team Champion once again. I think that's an incredible story and would certainly be an interesting story and a story that lots of people would be interested in talking about. So that's something to consider, no doubt. So it's certainly possible, but we'll have to wait and see. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on Taylor Wilde returning to Impact Wrestling? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you think she'll return? Will she be Jordynne Grace's tag team partner? Will she be a singles? How long will she stay around for? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll be sure to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys and chatting about Impact Wrestling here on the channel. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.